Hamilton. I enjoy reading out loud, and throughout my life I've bothered a few people doing that for them, having them listen to me. Probably the person that I bothered the most doing that years ago was my mother, but there have been others as well. I enjoy reading out loud. That doesn't mean I do a good job at it, but I enjoy it nonetheless. And today's January 22nd, 2015. My father would have been 85. And recently, my mother parted the scene. So a passage that I used to read her and that I've always enjoyed quite a bit is from a Kerouac novel called Big Sur. And writers in general are interesting. Quite their relationship with either their parents or their mothers. Charles Bukowski, he didn't like either of his parents. And he's got a story that he tells and one of his books where he came home as a child and his mother was crying because she found out that her father was seeing another woman, and she calls young Charles over and she says, "Do you love your mother?" And he writes, "I didn't, but she looked so sad I told her I did." And then you got Henry Miller, and he didn't like his mother at all. He even wondered, what's it going to be like when he passes away and has to go to heaven and see her. He kind of dreaded that idea. You've got the poet Allen Ginsberg, who did love his mother, but she had mental issues, and he would write that, even being around other women, he could smell his mother. So he had issues. But Jack Kerouac, he loved both of his parents, but in particular his mother. Very close relationship with his mother. And so I'm going to try to read this particular passage from Big Sur, and forgive me if I butcher it. The next sign is in Frisco itself, where after a night of perfect sleep in an old Skid Row hotel room, I go to see Monsanto at his City Lights bookstore, and he's smiling and glad to see me, says, "We were coming out to see you next weekend. You should have waited." But there's something else in his expression. When we're alone, he says, "Your mother wrote and said, your cat is dead." Ordinarily, the death of a cat means little to most men, a lot to fewer men, but to me and that cat, it was exactly and no lie and sincerely like the death of my little brother. I loved Tyke with all my heart. He was my baby, who as a kitten just slept in the palm of my hand, with his little head hanging down or just purring for hours, just as long as I held him that way, walking or sitting. He was like a floppy fur wrap around my wrist. I just twist him around my wrist or drape him, and he just purred, and even when he got big, I still held him that way. I could even hold this big cat in both hands with my arm outstretched right over my head, and he'd just purr. He had complete confidence in me, and when I left New York to come to my retreat in the woods, I'd carefully kissed him and instructed him to wait for me. Attends pour mu kittigou. I can't do French at all. Sorry about that. But my mother said in the letter he had died the night after I left. But maybe you'll understand me by seeing for yourself, by reading the letter. Sunday, July 20th, 1960. Dear son, I'm afraid you won't like my letter because I only have sad news for you right now. I really don't know how to tell you this, but brace up, honey. I'm going through hell myself. Little Tyke is gone. Saturday, all day, he was fine and seemed to pick up strength. But late at night, I was watching TV, a late movie. Just about 1:30 a.m. when he started belching and throwing up. I went to him and tried to fix him up, but to no avail. He was shivering like he was cold, so I wrapped him up in a blanket. Then he started to throw up all over me, and that was the last of him. Needless to say how I feel and what I went through. I stayed up till daybreak and did all I could to revive him, but it was useless. I realized at 4 a.m. he was gone, so at 6 I wrapped him up good in a clean blanket, and at 7 a.m. went out to dig his grave. I never did anything in my whole life so heartbreaking as to bury my beloved little Tyke, who was as human as you and I. I buried him under the honeysuckle vines, the corner of the fence. I just can't sleep or eat. I keep looking and hoping to see him come through my cellar door, calling, "Ma, wow." I'm just plain sick, and the weirdest thing happened when I buried Tyke. All the blackbirds I had fed all winter seemed to have known what was going on. Honest, son, this is no lies. There was lots and lots of 'em flying over my head and chirping and settling on the fence for a whole hour after Tyke was laid to rest. That's something I'll never forget. I wish I had a camera at the time, but God in me knows it and saw it. Now, honey, I know this is going to hurt you, but I had to tell you somehow. I'm so sick, not physically, but heart sick. I just can't believe or realize that my beautiful little Tyke is no more, and that I won't be seeing him come through his little shanty or walking through the green grass. P.S. I've got to dismantle Tyke's shanty. I just can't go out there and see it empty as is. Well, honey, write soon again and be kind to yourself. Pray the real God, your old mom, XXXX. So when Monsanto told me the news, and I was sitting there smiling with happiness the way all people feel when they come out of a long solitude, either in the woods or in a hospital bed, bang, my heart sank. It sank, in fact, with the same strange, idiotic helplessness as when I took the unfortunate deep breath on the seashore. All the premonitions tying in together. Monsanto sees that I'm terribly sad. He sees my little smile, the smile that came over me in Monterey, just so glad to be back in the world after my solitudes, and I walked around the streets just bemusedly Mona Lisa-ing at the sight of everything. He sees now how that smile has slowly melted away into a mock of chagrin. Of course, he can't know, since I didn't tell him, hardly want to tell it now, that my relationship with my cat and the other previous cats has always been a little Dottie. Some kind of psychological identification of the cats with my dead brother Gerard, who had taught me to love cats when I was 3 and 4, and we used to lie on the floor on our bellies and watch them lap up milk. the death of little brother Tyke indeed. Monsanto, seeing me so downcast, says, maybe you ought to go back to the cabin for a few more weeks. Or are you just going to get drunk again? I'm going to get drunk, yes. Because anyway, there are so many things brewing. Everybody's waiting. I've been daydreaming 1,000 wild parties in the woods. In fact, it's fortunate I've heard of the death of Tyke in my favorite exciting city of San Francisco. If I had been home when he died, I might have gone mad in a different way. But though now I ran out to get drunk with the boys, and still once in a while that funny little smile of joy came back as I drank, and melted away again, because now the smile itself was a reminder of death. The news made me go mad anyway at the end of the 3-week binge, creeping up on me finally on the terrible day of St. Carolyn by the Sea, as I can also call it, all confusing till I explain. A favorite passage, always been a giant cat fan. I've had at least 2 people now tell me I ought to get a cat. And God knows I probably dig cats more than women. But just don't know if I have it in me to get another one though. Anyways, love Mr. Kerouac and hope I didn't butcher it too bad.